24 hours every day. This is News 12, Long Island. And now, the daytime edition.
Will Congress vote to fund Grumman's F-14D fighter plane?
The House Appropriations Committee is expected to begin debating the defense budget today. Several amendments are pending on the floor of the House that would delete the F-14 from the bill. Just last week, an Appropriations Subcommittee restored funding for 24 F-14 Tomcats, and the House Armed Services Committee voted last month to restore the F-14. An amendment that would kill the F-14 is now expected to begin the floor debate tomorrow. Now, if the F-14 is eliminated from the defense budget, Grumman would have to lay off as many as 10,000 workers. The effects on Long Island could be severe. Joining us now to talk about the problem is James LaRocca. He is president of the Long Island Association. Thanks so much for joining us, Mr. LaRocca. Considering a worst-case scenario, Congress fails to approve the F-14 in the defense budget. What is the business community doing to see that those laid-off workers are absorbed on Long Island so that they're able to remain here?
Well, let's emphasize that we don't expect that worst-case scenario to happen. We don't expect anything close to 10,000 workers to really be affected when all is said and done. The Congress is at work. There are many innings yet to go. We've won some innings, we've lost some innings, and we remain optimistic that we're not going to face that scenario. But prudence requires us to think about what the future may hold. There is in the Department of Defense in Washington an Office of Impact Assistance. We have been in touch with them. We've already begun to think with them, with the state of New York, with the counties, with others. What will we do to absorb any layoffs that might occur? And perhaps even more importantly, what will we do to continue to plan the continuing transitions in this economy that are going on? As we know, manufacturing, while still very important, is not as big a part of the economy as it once was. We have very promising companies developing in high technology, biotechnology, and so forth. So there is a planning process underway, prudently, not in a panic situation, that's thinking about all these things.
What is the Long Island Association doing, either with Grumman or independently, to see that perhaps the F-14D is continue to be manufactured here?
We made a decision very early on with Grumman that a conventional lobbying campaign where Long Islanders went to Washington to complain about the impacts in their district would not be particularly persuasive on a guy from Iowa or California, but rather that where we have relationships, specific relationships with companies and with members in other states, we would go to those members through that economic network, if you will. So it's been a one-on-one, member-by-member thing where there's already a relationship. And we think part of the reason that we've been able to succeed thus far in the House is because we have found allies in other places through that economic network.
All right, while we have you here, let's switch gears here and talk about Shoreham. For the most part, excuse me, it looks like Shoreham is a done deal. The fuel rods have been taken out. The deal is signed, sealed, and delivered. Long Island Association, right from the beginning, though, has said we do not want to see the plant shut down. We don't want to see it dismantled. We don't even want to see it mothballed. What are you doing now in light of the fact of what's recently happened?
Well, the deal is done, as you say, and there is, in fact, we see a decommissioning occurring. The company, prodded by the Public Service Commission, is beginning to take the steps that make it less and less likely that the plant would operate. If that de facto decommissioning continues, we nevertheless feel under any circumstances it does not make sense to destroy this plant. There was a headline the other day about Mr. Kessel having the charge from the state to tear this plant to shreds. That is just not the way an intelligent economic community should proceed. If the plant cannot operate, and apparently it cannot because the political process will not let it, as a matter of simple prudence for the future, we should be trying to preserve it in some form against a future that none of us can predict.
So at this point, just yes or no, you are just standing by and waiting to see what happens?
On the contrary, we are an intervener before the NRC, asking the NRC, for heaven's sake, don't permit the destruction of the plant, even if it will not operate.
Okay, Mr. Jim LaRocca, thanks very much for being here with us,
you.
and I'm sure we'll be talking to you once again on both matters. In other news today, a Roosevelt teen is arraigned, charged in a sex attack on a 5-year-old boy. Police have charged 15-year-old Antonio Dixon as an adult. They say he sodomized the little boy on Saturday. Dixon was arrested at his home on Frederick Avenue yesterday. That's where the attack allegedly took place. The 5-year-old was treated and released from Hempstead General Hospital. And a bus driver charged with sexually abusing children had his bus route changed 2 years ago after complaints by parents. This was discussed yesterday by a Hicksville school principal. Harron Transportation Company transferred Robert Izzo, a kindergarten driver, from Huntington after he asked students for their photos. The company says it's fairly normal to get requests to have a driver's route changed. They say since there were no charges, crimes, or misconduct, they just transferred him to a different route. The 39-year-old Izzo was charged Saturday with abusing a 5-year-old girl while driving her to Willits Avenue Elementary School. He was also charged last May with sexually abusing a young boy. Prosecutors are now investigating Izzo in connection with other alleged incidents, including his possible involvement with youth-oriented groups.
And 2 Wyandanch teenagers are under arrest today, charged with staging a dogfight. Police say Terryton Williams and Elfir McKnight used their pets for a gambling operation. News 12's Lucy Yang has more.
Snowball is a mixed breed, about 2 years old and very friendly to strangers. But police say he was anything but gentle Saturday afternoon when his owner ordered him to fight another dog. Detectives believe the canines were encouraged to fight until death, but officers responded to the scene before either dog was seriously wounded.
Apparently it was some kind of a sporting event or a betting event that they had going on with these animals. They were placed under arrest by the officers and brought to the first squad detectives, where they were charged with an unclassified felony.
The 2 arrested were 16-year-old boys from Wyandanch. One of their dogs suffered some superficial scratch wounds, while Snowball here was taken to the Comac Emergency Animal Hospital for further treatment.
These wounds were multiple puncture wounds, a few minor lacerations, nothing life-threatening.
According to officials, dogfighting is not a big problem in Suffolk County. Police usually run into illegal cockfights, and even then, it's not that common.
This is only the second time in my 18 years that I've heard of dogs being placed in a fighting situation.
This is just a cruel, mindless act that these people are performing. These dogs have no control over their own destiny, and these people are throwing them into situations like this that just is totally inhumane.
In Comac, Lucy Yang, News 12, Long Island.
Well, today is the day to smooth on the sunscreen and sit by the water because it's going to be a hot one. Meteorologist Joe Chaffee has the forecast next.
And 2 big questions dominate this summer. Are people diving right into the water? And do you think the beaches are cleaner this summer than last? We're asking, and here's what you're saying.
I'm Gene Herring from Huntington, and I think the beaches are a lot better than last year. The water's a lot clearer than it was.
My name is Harold Trounfeld. I'm from East Northport, and as far as the beaches being better, as last year about the same.
My name's Glenn Darren. I'm from Huntington, and I've been to the beach a couple of times this summer, and I do think they are better.
Hi, my name is Drew. I'm from Long Beach, and I think the oceans this year has been a lot cleaner than it's been the past previous years. Why? Because no reason. I guess it's just maybe there's not as much dumping going on this year as there was last year.
From the lady in the harbor to the lighthouse on the ocean, from the farms out east to the city streets, it's the place that we call home. We're friendly people, and here's our way. We give our best every day. Long Island, we have served you as you've grown.
Tax lien, bankruptcy, bad credit, judgment, foreclosures.
If you need emergency money, call the fast cash people at Royal Consultants. Don't worry, you'll have the money in plenty of time. All you require is equity in your home or condo, and you'll get the money you need for any purpose, fast. There are no income checks, no credit checks, no problems, even if you've been turned down elsewhere. We're here to help 7 days a week. Call now for personal, confidential, and fast answers. Call Royal Consultants, 516-569-5177.
News 12 wants your help in a very special project, News 12's Decade in Review. It's a series of reports that looks back at the events and newsmakers that changed Long Island through the past 10 years. If you captured a slice of our history on home movies or videotape, we want to see it. And if you have a special remembrance or made a contribution to the island, we want to hear from you. Just write News 12 Decade in Review at this address. Meanwhile, stay tuned to News 12. We'll keep you one step ahead of tomorrow's headlines.
There's a sweet fragrance in the air over Floral Park today. It's from an early morning chemical fire at Citrus Allied Essences Limited. They're a major supplier of fragrances for perfumes across the country. Firefighters say the blaze started in the rear of the building. A musk oil vat exploded, touching off the blaze shortly after sunrise. It quickly spread through the rear of the two-floor structure before firefighters arrived. The burning chemicals have created a pleasant odor throughout the neighborhood.
We opened up the roof and had hand lines both from the interior and the exterior on the roof. The fire's been extinguished. There is no, at this particular moment, any toxic condition that we have to worry about other than the slippery oil that's involved, and we're cooling down the vats that remain in there at this moment, and a hazmat unit from Nassau County Fire Marshal's office will be doing a removal at this time.
There were no injuries in that blaze, and 3 area fire companies were called to the scene.
And in Southampton, investigators are sifting through the rubble today looking for clues to an explosion that leveled a multi-million-dollar home. Investigators now believe the home, owned by controversial art dealer Andrew Crispo, was destroyed by a natural gas explosion on Saturday. They're still trying to determine whether the blast was outside the home on Gin Lane or in a gas pipe inside the home. The powerful blast was felt throughout the fashionable neighborhood.
We heard a big explosion and the house shook. And then we looked out the window and we saw all the flames. Right away was the fire right away after the explosion.
Crispo, who was recently paroled from prison for tax evasion, was not home at the time of the blast. He was acquitted last year on charges he took part in the sadomasochistic murder, that is, of a Norwegian modeling student.
And some Suffolk residents are up in arms over recent county budget cuts. They want funding restored for the Office of Women and Children. They protested yesterday in Central Islip, led by Susan Lebeau. She's a Democrat who plans to challenge legislator Wayne Prospect in the upcoming primaries. According to Lebeau, the agency spends $560,000 per year servicing women and children. With a staff of 11, she says it provides counseling for abuse victims as well as legal services.
Cuts have to be made, but this was not a cut. This was not a cutback on personnel in these offices. This was a total abolition. If I were elected, I would look for other ways for the government to be fiscally responsible while maintaining these services to women and children.
Legislator Wayne Prospect, who voted to cut funding for the program, defends the move. He says the Office for Women and Children doesn't provide any direct services, but is only a referral service that costs the county $350,000 a year to run.
New York City politics has spilled over the border onto Long Island. Democratic mayoral candidate David Dinkins made a campaign stop in Hempstead yesterday. Nassau County Assemblywoman Earlene Hill held a fundraiser for Dinkins at her home. She called it a symbolic gesture, reaching hands across the city line. Hill hopes that gesture will have a positive impact on Long Island.
You see, what happens in New York City, it has a direct impact on Long Island. And in fact, as Mr. Dinkins stated earlier, the crime factor, the crime problems that they have in New York City, they do come across into Nassau County. And if he's going to do something by increasing the police in New York City, it's going to have an impact on Nassau County. We want to do that because we are partners. We are neighbors.
Polls show Dinkins to be the leading Democratic candidate for New York mayor.
And in environmental news, Governor Cuomo is signing a new law aimed at keeping the ocean pollution-free. Using Jones Beach as a backdrop, the governor is putting his stamp of approval on the Clean Oceans Fund. The law requires an end to the dumping of sewage sludge in the Atlantic by the year 1992. It complies with a federal statute which sets hefty financial penalties for illegal ocean dumpers. The fines are paid directly now to the state to develop other methods of waste treatment and disposal.
Well, is the beach the place to be today? Joe Chaffee has the answer to that. I would assume yes is the answer.
Yes, yesterday was the first beach day we've had around here in quite a while. Today's a nice one. Tomorrow will be another beach day, so will Wednesday, and then we'll cool down the rest of the week.
As usual, though, cooler at the beaches?
Yes, the sea breeze will be in. I was just sitting here doing a little math, figuring that it's about 48 days left in meteorological summer.
Oh, boy.
If we look at June, July, August. If you want to figure it out in other terms, it's 158 shopping days now until Christmas.
That's all?
That's all.
That's amazing.
It's counting down. Why don't we check out what's going on, folks, as the clouds are, well, relative to the entire shape and distance of the universe. The clouds are right around the corner, but they're really pretty far away, down through western Ohio, through the Tennessee Valley, and inland of the southeast coast and western Florida through the Gulf states back through Texas. This, by the way, is still all the residual moisture that was hanging over us late last week, part of that upper low complex that was drifting to the south and west and now has moved way to the west. And in combination with all that moisture, even though you would be worried that some of that moisture would get back in here, we are protected, and we may be protected for quite a while. Here at the surface, we put the highs and lows on the map as we usually do, and where all the cold fronts and warm fronts are, and you can see there's not very much in the way of different surface features. We have one high off the New England coast that's almost overhead. That's a little finger of dry air that pushed through late yesterday with a weak backdoor cold front that has now since dissipated. This high bringing humidity levels down just enough so that at least it's comfortable, but it still will be hot today. The Bermuda high is very strong. It's built from Bermuda west all the way through to the Mississippi Valley and even points beyond that. That's going to stay in control for at least another 2 to 3 days. The other good thing is that this high is built so far to the west that normally we would see the moisture circulating around the backside of the Bermuda high. It would come right up the east coast and we'd be in the humidity and the clouds every waking minute through a heat wave. This time around with the high pushed so far to the west that the moisture rides the backside of the Bermuda high in places like Alabama through, that's Georgia there, Alabama, Mississippi, Tennessee, and so on. So until the high weakens a bit, we won't have to deal too much with in the way of rain. We will have to deal with an increase in humidity come tomorrow. Here's your forecast now for the boaters for the rest of this day. It's really ideal boating conditions and shore conditions or whatever you might have planned for today on a nice summer day. Locally, onshore winds at speeds of 8 to 18 knots, 2 to 3 foot seas on the ocean, a foot or so on the sound. Visibility 5 miles or better. Water temperatures are in the low 70s. And your tides are running near normal. We have split high tides today for all 3 locations, one today and one tomorrow. Low tides occurring about 6 hours and 10 minutes after the first high tide or about 6 hours before the second high tide.
Whichever one's easier.
Right.
Thanks a lot, Joe. We'll check in with the forecast later.
Okay.
Well, no rain in the forecast for today, but we certainly have had our share this summer. And with all that rain, Long Island's tick population has never been higher, and the threat of Lyme disease is on everyone's mind. The problem is it's a disease that's hard to detect. News 12's Nancy Bestman has an update on how to avoid Lyme disease.
Chris and Carolyn Falango never gave much thought to Lyme disease until Chris's mother came down with it.
Not at all. I never thought about it. I heard about it, but it happened to everybody else but me. But then when it happened to my mother, now I think about it.
And Chris and Carolyn are not alone. They are among hundreds of Long Islanders who are worried about being bitten by a deer tick infected with Lyme disease. At Robert Moses State Park, officials say avoid ticks. Here's how.
You can avoid, any contact with the tick by wearing long clothing, light-colored clothing. Among other reasons, the tick shows up a little better on light-colored clothing. Also should take the precaution of tucking your pants legs into your socks.
Now, most important, if you are going to be in a wooded area, stay on the path. Experts say ticks don't jump out onto you. What they do is they latch onto your skin or clothing as you brush up against a piece of grass.
I used to go to Sailor's Haven, and I've since changed plans because I'm really afraid of getting bitten, like some people that I know have gotten bitten by ticks.
Sailor's Haven is in the Fire Island National Seashore. While most people at Robert Moses choose the shoreline, many at Fire Island hike through the woods.
Well, anywhere you're going to wind up with high, 6 to 8 inch grass area not being found. A wetland area where the grass isn't cut down, that could be a high area. A high incidence area.
After spending time in a grassy spot, check yourself and your children for ticks. Also, wash your clothes and shower immediately. At Robert Moses State Park, Nancy Bestman, News 12, Long Island.
And besides humans, you should watch out for pets, too. They're very likely to contract Lyme disease.
And you should know because your dog had Lyme disease.
Yeah. And, well, coming up, we will have a follow-up on the plane disaster in Sioux City, Iowa last weekend.
And Long Islanders, it'll be a hot one today, a good day to go to the beach. But do you feel the beaches are cleaner this year? We're asking, and here's what you're saying.
My name's Ben Ritzy. I'm from Huntington, and I really haven't had time to go to the beaches at all. The one time I've been there, the water has been cleaner, but no, I'm still worried that you might pick up something that had all the bacteria this year.
Dean Celestia from Huntington. I think the beaches are better because the fish are back. And I'm a surf caster, and the blues are definitely back, and they weren't here at all last summer. And I'm happy about that.
They start early, and they're out in force, working every day. So when you're ready for the beach, 1,000 miles of Long Island Beach will be ready for you.
I'm Suffolk County Executive Pat Halpin, inviting you to celebrate summer in Suffolk County this year.
Finally, a career move that puts you in the driver's seat. Come to the Commercial Driver Training School and let us teach you in as little as 60 days how to handle the road. We'll not only help you get your Class 1 license, we'll help you get a job that can keep you working for your entire life. Financial aid available for those who qualify. So visit the Commercial Driver Training School for a free tour and take hold of a career that'll put you in the driver's seat.
In Japan, Prime Minister Susuke Uno has announced his resignation following his party's overwhelming defeat in parliamentary elections. The conservative Liberal Democratic Party, hurt by sex and influence peddling scandals, lost its upper house majority for the first time in 34 years. Uno has not said exactly when he'll leave office. He's held the job for less than 2 months.
Coal mine strikers in the Soviet Union may be one step closer to getting their demands. Yesterday in Moscow, Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev made a surprise television appearance. Reportedly, Gorbachev said the new Soviet parliament, the Soviet Supreme, would consider some of the issues raised by more than 500,000 Soviet miners. The miners are calling for better living and working conditions and higher wages. Reportedly, Gorbachev has described the strike as one of the worst upsets in the Soviet Union since the 1920s.
Well, 45 people were hospitalized after an American Airlines jet ran into some unexpected turbulence. The flight carrying 248 people from San Juan to Miami became rough about an hour before landing on Saturday night. The shakeup bounced passengers against the cabin ceiling. An airline spokesman said most of the injured suffered neck and shoulder sprains. One passenger said the seatbelt light was not on. He said the pilot told them the storm was unexpected, that the radar showed everything was clear. And in Sioux City, Iowa, government investigators are now using infrared cameras to find more debris from United Airlines Flight 232. They've been looking through cornfields within a 60-mile radius for pieces that may have fallen from the DC-10 before it crashed. The investigators are hoping any recovered parts will help explain the loss of hydraulic power before the crash. That accident claimed 110 lives.
Well, there's a new law called the Catastrophic Health Act, which affects most of us, but we don't know much about it, and experts say it is very complicated. Fran Purcell joins us now to try to uncomplicate it. Fran?
Well, Roma, I'm no expert on this, but I've done a lot of following up on it, and I think there's some real problems that exist here. And I think the people who are affected, and that is mostly people over 65 years of age, are beginning to be concerned about it. The initial reaction, even the press had some good reaction on this particular legislation. But if you're making over $27,000 a year and you're over 65 years of age, you will have to pay on top of your regular taxes $800. If you're making about $52,000 a year and you're over 65 and you're filing with your wife, you're going to have to pay about $1,600 a year. Ironically, as you go up into the $75,000 bracket, you will also pay $1,600 a year. But it must be understood that these taxes are on top of your regular taxes. Now, about 70% of the people in this country do have a Medicare program. So you're taking care of those people that don't have anything. But I think one of the things that might happen, and I think you'll see something along this line develop in the future as far as negotiations for labor contracts. You're going to say, well, you're going to be taken care of when you're over 65. You pay that extra money. We won't put this in the labor contracts. And I think that's where we could run into tremendous trouble. A lot of people haven't even discussed this particular portion of it at this time. But if you don't have these labor contracts with your health program, it means that the eventual program at the end of the line is going to be extremely expensive. And it affects everybody. A lot of young people, and you two young ladies are both young yet, and you're not concerned about it. and yet you tell me you are concerned, and I think you should be. It's a very important act, and I think people should watch it very carefully. I think it's important that we have it explained to us better than it has been in the press. There's been a lot of contrary opinions on this thing. The New York Times wrote a very good editorial on it, and there are some laudable things in it. There's no question about it. But it's a shame that those people who, during their lifetime, have negotiated for certain contracts, certain health plans, they paid for that really, rather than maybe raises in their salary, and then these other people come in and have to pay this tax on top of a tax. It's very complicated and something we should all look at very, very carefully.
Is there any place we can go to have it explained a little better to us?
I was thinking here that perhaps we might get somebody from Washington who could give us an unbiased opinion on both sides of the issue, because it's a very, very big one, and it affects all people, even the young people today who are going to grow into the age of 65.
That's right.
Okay. Thanks, Fran.
Good idea, Fran. Thanks a lot.
We can have them on some point in the future.
Sure.
Well, coming up, do women feel less safe because of such incidents as the jogger rape in Central Park? We'll discuss that issue.
And the president of the National Organization of Women speaks out about abortion on Capitol Hill. That's next. Right now, we take a look at Long Island's roadways. We'll be right back.
Every year or so, AIDE magazine, AIDE, prints some of the, well, rather remarkable explanations that drivers give to insurance companies when submitting accident claims, and some of them are doozies. I'll mention no names and just extract the bottom line. Quote, "The pedestrian had no idea which direction to run, so I ran over him." Now, if you think about that for a moment, it was well intended but poorly put. Here's the driver trying to avoid hitting the pedestrian, and the pedestrian trying to avoid being hit, and they both were wrong. Well, here's another. "Coming home, I drove into the wrong house and collided with a tree I don't have." Well, I can picture that, can't you? Here are a few more. I'll try to be calm about this. "In my attempt to kill a fly, I drove into a telephone pole." The implication being that the fly was on the pole. "I was sure the old fellow would never make it to the other side of the road when I struck him." I can't unravel that one, I'm afraid. This one I like. "The guy's car was all over the road. I had to swerve a number of times before I hit it." Another funny one that wasn't very funny to the guy it happened to. "I thought the window was down, but found out it was up when I put my hand through it." And for the pedantic truth, try this one. "I pulled away from the side of the road, glanced at my mother-in-law, and headed over the embankment." And for a kicker, try this. "The telephone pole was approaching. I was trying to get out of its way when it hit my front end." Classics, every one of them. That's 2 minutes. I'm Joe Cook.
In the event of a nuclear war, some say Suffolk residents are doomed, and 30% of the people in Nassau would not make it off the island. Those are two of the conclusions made in a just-completed state summary of how New Yorkers would fare in a nuclear war. The doomsday scenario was written under pressure from the Federal Emergency Management Agency. Without the report, the federal government would not give the state $7.5 million for emergency services. State officials say they don't hold much credence in the study because many of the assumptions are outdated and others held no basis in fact. However, one part of the theoretical report, the state says, is real. It's the inability to evacuate Suffolk. It concludes that the shape of Long Island and the overstressed roads make it impossible to leave the East End in an emergency. State authorities say an analogy could be drawn to what would happen in the event of a nuclear accident at Shoreham. Why are commuters giving the Long Island Railroad poor grades? That's what the State Consumer Protection Board wants to know, and it's launched an investigation. Executive Director Richard Kessel says despite massive spending for capital improvements, commuters are giving the system a grade of C. Kessel says this can no longer be tolerated. This year's report shows little improvement over last year's. Station and train restrooms are deplorable, and the unavailability of seats is still a problem. A Long Island Railroad spokesperson admits the railroad has problems, but has been working to correct them. Debate over whether using video display terminals is a health hazard is getting federal backing. The government has just set aside $2 million to study the problem, but the question of VDT safety is not new to Suffolk. Suffolk is the first county in the country to actually regulate VDT use. It was a year ago that the landmark video display terminal law went into effect. The law makes it mandatory for businesses with more than 20 terminals to provide work breaks and employee education. Several Long Island companies are challenging that law in court. No ruling has yet been made. Fighting high inflation is Federal Reserve Chairman Alan Greenspan's main job. But what are his battle plans? Business editor Karen Ryan asked Erwin Kellner, chief economist from Manufacturers Hanover.
Dr. Kellner, last week Alan Greenspan testified his mid-year report. What will the effects of his testimony be this week?
Well, this week, Karen, it's very likely that interest rates will move a little bit lower because, you see, in his mid-year report, he surprised everybody by expressing more concern over the possibility of recession than over the fears of inflation. Back in February, when he last testified in this manner, he was very worried about inflation, and as a result, interest rates went up. So now that he's more worried about recession, we can assume that interest rates will be going lower.
But you used the term, will go lower slowly. How slowly?
Well, he is easing monetary policy gradually and reluctantly, and the reason is that there's still a lot of inflation out there, and it's the first duty of a central banker to worry about inflation, the value of our money.
Last time the prime rate went down, a lot of major banks did not follow. Why not?
Because the Federal Reserve did not give us the signal that it was ready to lower interest rates. But I think we'll get the signal this week, and you may recall I did forecast that before I went on vacation that the prime rate would go down, so I'm forecasting it again. Watch for the prime rate to go down this week.
That sounds like a pretty sure bet. This week there is a major number coming out, the GNP. It will be the first look at the second quarter, first look at the half. What are you expecting?
Karen, I'm expecting that the GNP in the second quarter went up at an annual rate of less than 2%, which would represent a considerable slowing in growth from the first quarter when the GNP went up by more than 4%. The monthly figures that we've gotten for the second quarter show that growth may have disappeared altogether, and that as we are now in the third quarter, we may not even be growing anymore. We'll have to wait and see.
Okay, thanks for joining us.
The rape of the jogger in Central Park this past April has made us think twice about a lot of things. Our increasingly violent society, the criminal justice system, and for women, personal safety. And just last week, here on Long Island, 35-year-old Leah Green was killed while she slept in her St. James home where she lived alone. More and more these days, women fear for their own safety, and that fear is heightening their anger and their defenses. In the August issue of Glamour magazine, writer Laura Mosdale takes a look at how women are protecting themselves in her article, The Central Park Rape. Has it made us angry, scared, or smart? She joins Lee now in our studio. Lee?
Roma, thanks a lot. Laura, it's nice to have you back again.
Thank you.
What's happened? Are we angry, scared, or smart, or all three?
I'd say all three. I would say all three, based on interviews that we did with over 100 women around the country. It's not unusual for a crime like this, of course, to make us very conscious of our fears for personal safety. But what surprised me, I think, was how much women thought about it, even if there wasn't a particular crime in mind.
This particular crime did make headlines all around the country. So I'm sure most of the women that you interviewed had heard about it. Was it a sense of outrage at this particular crime that you were finding out about?
There was a lot of outrage, yes. I think because the crime was so brutal. But there were definitely mixed emotions. There were some women who felt resigned about it, and there were others who felt, even though they didn't want to blame the victim in any way, that she just shouldn't have been in the park at that hour alone. And others who said it's wrong to question whether, why she was in the park. What we should be asking is what were those boys doing there, and why did they do what they did?
Who did you find out is more afraid these days? Is it just single women or all women?
I think women who live in urban areas are especially conscious of personal safety issues.
And not so much women in rural areas?
They think about it too, but not to the same extent, I don't think, just based on the interviews that I did.
Let's talk about the way some women are defending themselves. One of these caught my eye. One woman in Decatur, Georgia, keeps a large stuffed rabbit in the front seat of her car and dresses it as a sleeping man while she drives alone at night.
Yeah, in fact, it reminds me of something I saw in a mail order catalog recently, a dummy that you can buy for $2,000 or $3,000 to put in your car, and
That's
it seems to be aimed specifically at women.
Yeah, I did see that advertisement.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the most obvious, guns. Are more women carrying guns these days?
An article that Glamour did a couple of months ago seemed to indicate that yes. There were some women who I interviewed who felt that guns were more a part of the problem than the solution. They were afraid that the gun could be used against them, and they didn't want to carry one.
What about self-defense? Are they taking self-defense classes?
I'd say that, again, you know, it was mixed. Some women take self-defense classes. Others feel that a better defense is just not getting into a situation where they feel threatened at all. And that can mean anything from not taking the subway after 9 o'clock at night to not going out much at all when, you know, when their husband is away. There's this one woman who said, when my husband's away, I don't go out with my friends because I don't like getting off the train at my train station and walking alone to my car.
Now, taking the other side of that coin, there are some women, as I read in the article, who say they refuse to be ruled by their fear.
That's
and
right.
They're taking what they say are calculated risks.
That's right.
And quite a few of them. They will just go out and say if it happens, it happens, but most of them admit to thinking it won't happen to them.
Yeah, I think that's true, and it's almost sort of protective amnesia. If they dwell too much on what could happen, then they feel that their lives would be too ruled by their fears.
Now, the truth of the matter, though, is one of the statistics brought out in your article was that 1 in 12 women will be the victim of rape.
That's true. I think something that can be a little bit misleading about that is that frequently women are raped by men that they know, and women aren't afraid of men that they know, even if there might be reason to be. So,
did you find that many of the women were more afraid now than they were, say, 5 years ago? Or have they been like that for quite a while? Is it just our society over the last decade, 2 decades?
Again, I think that really varies. I think for some of the women who've grown up in urban areas, it's something that they've always felt. Others who may have had grown up in safer areas are more affected by stories like the Central Park rape or, you know, occasional stories in the media.
Yeah, the headlines always brings it to our attention. The article is called "The Central Park Rape, Has It Made Us Angry, Scared, or Smart?" To read more about it, it's in the August issue of Glamour magazine. Laura Mosdale, thanks for coming by again, and we'll be seeing you again with more articles.
Okay, thank you.
Roma, back
Thanks
to you.
both. Some good words of advice. We have some weather advice for you. Open your windows wide or crank up the AC. Temperatures will be rising. Meteorologist Joe Chaffee will have the complete forecast next, and Stan Dworkin will take you tiptoeing through the garden to show you how to get a pair of lady slippers. That's all next. Stay tuned.
When my friends have questions about appliances, they often come to me because I work at Loco. Take air conditioners. An old one uses more energy, which adds a lot to your electric bills. You could reduce your cooling costs by more than 20% if you replace an old air conditioner with a high-efficiency model. And if you're buying an air conditioner this summer, ask about Loco cash rebates. We give them to customers who buy energy-saving models. For more ways to reduce electric use and hold down your electric bills, give us a call.
Honey, this store has lots of vanities. Let's get this one.
We'd like this vanity, please.
Oh, that's not in stock. How about this one?
Oh, this won't fit. Well, what about that one?
Nope, but I've got hundreds of this one.
Oh, hundreds in stock, but not the one we want.
At Consumers, you'll really find hundreds of vanities to choose from. Thousands are inventoried in our warehouse and available to take home today. Consumers, where kitchens and baths are our only business.
Looking at local baseball action, 6 in a row. That's the latest streak both New York teams have right now, except for one thing. They're going in opposite directions. At Shea, the Mets swept the series with the Braves winning yesterday 7-2, while in Texas, the Yanks suffered their most heartbreaking defeat of the season, falling to the Rangers 5-4 in 10 innings.
Well, it was celebration time in Cooperstown as the Hall of Fame opened its doors to 4 new members. Heading the list were 2 great ball players from the 70s. Carl Yastrzemski, Yaz, from Bridgehampton, Long Island, entered the Hall following his career with the Boston Red Sox. And Johnny Bench, catcher of the Cincinnati Reds, also inducted. It was a time for both men to reflect on their great careers and to simply enjoy their day.
Fans are always great. They were here in numbers from New England. You just looked out, and as far as you could see were people. I just couldn't believe it. And to stand up before the commissioner before he even started to make his reading of the plaque, to have the fans just keep cheering and cheering, it just overwhelmed me.
Ever since 2nd grade, when Mrs. Rosser asked everybody in class what they wanted to be, and I said, I want to be a Major League Baseball player, and they laughed. And in the 8th grade, Frances Tate asked her class, what do you want to be? And I said, I want to be a Major League Baseball player, and they laughed again. I was only 5'2", had size 11.5 feet, same hand and the same size head. So you might understand that Barnum and Bailey at that time were the only people interested in scouting me. A guy by the name of Yogi Berra said, it's not over till it's over. Yogi, it's over. We have made it, and thank you very much.
And congratulations to them all. An estimated 25,000 people, the largest crowd ever to attend a Hall of Fame induction, watched the festivities.
American Greg LeMond capped a remarkable comeback by winning the Tour de France bicycle race. LeMond made up a 50-second deficit in the Versailles de Paris leg yesterday to beat Frenchman Laurent Fignon by 8 seconds after 23 days and more than 2,000 miles of racing. In 1986, just months after he became the first American to win the Tour de France, LeMond was wounded in California by his brother in a shooting accident. In the next 2 years, he also had an emergency appendectomy and an Ashen operation. Experts thought he would never race again, but he proved everyone wrong.
Well, they're off and jumping in Bridgehampton. The Hampton Classic Horse Show is underway. The Classic is America's largest outdoor hunter-jumper show. More than 1,000 horses are expected to compete in the event. Crowds of at least 25,000 are expected for the world-class competition, in which over $250,000 will be awarded in prize money. The show features the popular Hunt Breakfast, along with nearly 24 events with Long Islanders all competing.
This show starts by paying respect to the people who really got this show going, which are Long Islanders. Now, of course, it's an international event, but we take our day when the grass is the prettiest and we give it to the Long Islanders as a present.
Hampton Classic means so much. It's like the World Series, you know. You feel those butterflies, there's electricity in the air, and it's just a wonderful feeling.
All proceeds from the Classic will benefit the Southampton Hospital and the U.S. Equestrian Team. The competition will run until next Sunday.
It's a pretty nice day to be outdoors today. That's because there's only one H in the forecast.
The hot.
Yeah.
We'll get the other 2 tomorrow. We got a break today, which is nice. The little dry push that came down can make a difference. When it's hot, folks, it's hot. Even when it is dry, you certainly will feel the effects of the sun on your person. So if you are going to spend your time outdoors today, maybe restrict your exercise time to this evening when it gets a little bit cooler. And, of course, drink plenty of fluids. All the usual warnings that go when the hot weather gets here. Plus the fact that we've had so little hot weather so far this summer in comparison to last summer. Why don't we check out the lows from our weather watchers that call in fast and furiously every day, as temperatures bottoming out overnight in the upper 60s, but more importantly, the humidity levels did drop overnight as a backdoor front just fell apart right overhead, but not before we got that nice little push. 66 for the low at Riverhead, Hampton Bays low of 68. Port Jeff bottoming out at 69. Lenny the Lawyer, Plainview low of 69. West Babylon, Joe Gaffney low of 69. East Patchogue, Joe Panarella low of 70. 70 for low East Norwich, and 70 for Great Neck, the low 69 for Freeport. Our sunset today is at 8:16 p.m. 45 the record low in 1950. Certainly that 90 is within reach. It's just that on some days you get that sea breeze in Suffolk County just as it's about to get to 87 or 8 in the middle to early part of the afternoon. The sea breeze kicks on in and knocks the temperatures back down, even though we think that most of inland Nassau County today will reach 90 without any problem. Clear skies up and down the coast, the moisture confined to the Gulf states and back through the Rockies, and no real cool air in sight for the next couple of days, with the strong ridge aloft built over the southeastern coastline and the main band of westerly winds in the upper layers of the atmosphere confined to the U.S.-Canadian border. We see no intrusion of cool, dry air until about Wednesday or so this week. A cold front now way up and through central Canada will sweep across the Great Lakes and then head our way for Wednesday night, kick off a few thunderstorms, and then it turns significantly cooler and drier, we think, come Thursday and Friday. So hang on for the next couple of days and suffer through it. Here's your forecast now. Have a good weekend, everybody. Well, weekend. We just came out of a weekend. I guess it's force of habit. I don't know. Lots of sunshine, less humid, but still hot. Highs near 90, except 70s to near 80 at the shore. I have Carol Silva syndrome, I think.
Yes, you do.
Mostly clear with tonight. The humidity goes up 67 to 72. And then for tomorrow, hazy sunshine, hot and humid. So then we have the 3 H's tomorrow, 87 to 92, except 70s to near 80 along shore locations and in eastern Long Island.
And speaking of Carol, she extended her favorite part of the week, the weekend, by one day,
By one
taking
day.
the day off. Not a bad day to be off
Lucky
either.
her.
Thanks a lot, Joe. Well, in the garden spot today, Stan Dworkin shows us how to add a little color to our life by growing garden balsams.
Today the garden spot is in Clark Garden in Albertson, New York, looking at one of their many unusual annuals. If you're interested in growing annuals in your own garden next year, this is a wonderful place to come and see them in flower. This particular annual is not a new annual. In fact, it's a very old plant. It is garden balsam, or annual lady slipper, or busy Lizzie. This is the impatiens that was grown before our little garden impatiens became so popular. The trouble with garden balsam, it hides its flowers under a bushel. Let me show you what I mean. In order to see just how floriferous a plant this is, you have to hold away the leaves and the other branches. It does indeed hide its glory underneath its leaves, and it makes flowers up the stem, continuing to hide as they go up the stem. Here are buds for the coming flowers, and you can see how those buds for the coming flowers are still underneath the leaves. Garden balsam is a plant that requires more or less the same care as impatiens. It does take a little bit more sun. I should say it's tolerant of more sun. It does want a good deal of water. It wants a very rich soil. Be sure that you work a good deal of compost into the soil along with the topsoil and peat moss. And of course, feed the plant in the middle of the summer, a top dressing of compost or of some other plant food. You can then grow a garden full of these busy Lizzies or garden balsam. If you want to make cuttings, take a branch, a tip of a branch, take it off with your thumb, and then just remove the lower leaves and the buds. You can root that quite easily. Until next time in the garden spot, this is Stan Dworkin, News 12 Long Island.
Well, coming up, we will be Broadway bound. In our studio is the actor and director of the play. Tell us about a Long Island production of Neil Simon's autobiographical production, stage play.
And we'll be sailing the high seas of the Great South Bay as some very fast boats hit the water for the Great Race. That's next. Stay with us.
News 12 weather brought to you by Martin Viet Nurseries, celebrating over 60 years of expert horticultural service.
This weekend, take a stroll through a garden paradise at Martin Viet Nurseries. You'll want to bring some home. After all, it'll make someone special very happy. You. This weekend, wander through a field of colors at Martin Viet Nurseries. You'll want to bring some home. After all, it'll make someone special very happy. You.
On Route 25A, East Norwich, Long Island.
There is another way to put milk this fresh on your table, but it's not nearly as convenient. Dairy Barn. Fresh milk and much, much moo. fresh milk, and much, much moo.
The Gateway Theater's next production may not exactly be heading for Broadway, but it is Broadway bound. That's the name of Neil Simon's third play based on his life as an up-and-coming comedy writer. And the Bellport Summer Stock Theater is opening the show with a benefit performance tomorrow night. Joining Roma in our studio right now to talk about the production are two company members. Mark Jacobson plays Eugene Jerome, the Neil Simon character, and Robert Toroff is the show's director. Roma.
Thanks a lot, Lee. Thanks for coming, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Mark, you have played Eugene Jerome in the other two productions of the Neil Simon plays.
Yes.
That was the role that really shot Matthew Broderick to fame and fortune.
Right. That was his, I think it was his first Broadway play.
First big Broadway play.
Yeah,
and he won the Tony Award for it.
Big break. Do you find it difficult to put your own stamp on it?
No, not really. I love Matthew Broderick. I actually try to imitate him, I think, when I do this. I think he's wonderful.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's my own.
So I guess you could say imitation is a form of flattery.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Do you feel that you're able to grow now that you've starred in 3 productions?
Yeah, I definitely saw the difference each time I did it. Well, it's both of them. All 3 of them are written so well. It's easy to grow into each one. And now this one is actually my own age finally. The one that we're doing now. The first one I was only 15.
15.
15.
That presents a challenge, right?
Yeah, that was difficult to do. But this one's easy because now I'm at the right age.
Now, Robert, did you direct the other 2 productions?
No.
Just this one?
I did, however, direct Mark in Brighton Beach just a couple of months ago at my theater in Florida. And then we followed it with Broadway Bound.
So I guess you liked him. He's back again.
Very much. He's a marvelous actor, quick, and he knows every nuance, and as you say, imitation is the best form of flattery.
Yeah. Now, I imagine a lot of Long Islanders have, well, many Long Islanders might have seen the Broadway production. What are you doing that might be different that you could say to audience members to attract them even if they've seen it already?
Well, of course, every production has its own sort of life and chemistry. And these 6 actors are all different than the Broadway people. They've worked with me before, and so the play is ready. And they know where the work is, they know where the laughs are, they know where the poignancy is. It's a very touching play, as well as very funny. I think it's his best of the 3. Of course, it culminates Neil Simon's growth as a writer and sends him off to his great triumphs. And this, I think, will, if they've seen Mark before, the Long Island audiences, what, 4 years ago, 5 years ago when they did?
6 years ago, then 4 years ago.
They're going to be interested in seeing his growth personally also.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Now, you say you've performed another of the trilogy plays.
Right. I've done all 3 out here in Long Island.
Right.
I did Brighton Beach 4 years ago, Biloxi Blues 2 years ago, and now 2 years later I'm doing this one.
But you did one of the plays not on Long Island, right?
Right. I also did the first one down in Florida.
What I was getting at is, how do the audiences differ, Long Island versus Florida audiences?
Oh, very different. I don't think they're, I don't want to put them down in Florida. I don't think they're quite as quick in Florida.
Slower, they're older and slower.
They didn't get some of the things. Maybe because they don't understand these New York people. I don't know. I didn't think they were as quick as the audiences were out here.
Have you heard from Neil Simon? Because I don't think too many people have put on the Broadway Bound.
We heard nothing bad if he's had something to say, but no.
I don't believe so. He probably doesn't know we've done all 3 out here.
Right.
Although he's close enough, I wouldn't be surprised if he came out.
Oh, I would.
It's one of the first productions, I believe, since it's closed on Broadway.
Now, the Gateway Playhouse is generally known for doing musicals. Do you think it's going to be tough to entertain audiences who are looking for some music?
No, we didn't have a problem with the other 2. They loved both of the other 2, especially Brighton Beach. I think this is the only straight shows they've done out here, well, in a long time anyway. And no, the audiences, they loved it. They had a great time.
They probably liked the variety.
Yeah.
I directed The Brood that played earlier this year.
Well, you know, those 3 plays by Neil Simon are really my favorite, because I was never a Neil Simon fan until I saw those 3, so I'm looking forward to seeing it.
You like the more semi-serious Neil Simon?
Yeah,
rather than
it's something with more of a
one-liners?
social commentary.
Right.
I also have to mention that this benefit performance tomorrow is benefiting the Little Flower Children's School, which is a wonderful cause, and I'm going to be there, so I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'll probably have a review of the show. So
Okay.
Okay.
That's okay.
Not to get you nervous. All right. That's it from here. Let's go back now to Lee.
No pressure whatsoever, Roma. None whatsoever. That's tomorrow night, the Gateway Playhouse in Bellport. Someone once said watching sailboat racing is like watching grass grow because sailboats are so slow. But that was in the days before catamarans. News 12's Joyce Hanley caught up with some of the multi-hull sailors during a weekend competition.
Summertime is a time for sailing, and this weekend dozens of skippers from all across the eastern seaboard are trimming the sails on these brightly colored catamarans. They're competing in the Northeastern Hobie Cat Arena Championships held this year in the Great South Bay off Hexter State Park.
One of these fun type events where you get everybody together, a lot from New England, a couple guys from New Jersey, and they all get together and just have a good time sailing together and racing around. Somewhat competitive, somewhat fun.
This is the first Hobie Cat race for Rick Maher, and he says he's having the time of his life.
Yesterday, I got wrapped around one of the buoys. I tacked around the buoy, and all of a sudden the wind died. I had the buoy in between my two pontoons. So that caused a little snag, but we had a good time.
How did you do yesterday?
Oh, we did wonderful. Oh, we came in.
Catamarans are known for their speed. They can get up to 25 miles per hour. Now, what does it take to be a winner? Well, you have to know how to position the boat, get a good start, and know how to read the winds. There are 3 categories in this race, A, B, and C. A being the fleets with the most experience. But sometimes it's luck, not experience, that counts. This sailor has been competing for years, but today he hit a little snag.
We're sailing along on the port tack, and I felt a very heavy weather helm. Looked back and my rudder was cocked.
And some of the skippers who just plain got a late start say that's not going to stop them. They're going to be winners.
We got the speed and the power and the enthusiasm. As soon as we finish talking to you, we're going to be off. You're going to watch how fast we get out of here. Okay, Bill, you ready to go? We're ready. Boom. Okay, we're off.
The winners will receive a trophy and a chance to compete in the national competition. In the Great South Bay, I'm Joyce Hanley for News 12 Long Island.
And if you've got any brilliant ideas, today is a good one to go out sailing, so I may be headed out there. That's it for us. I'm Roma Torre in for Carol Silva. Thanks for watching.
And I'm Lee Tyrell. We say so long this hour with a look at Lloyd Harbor. These pictures taken by News 12 photographer Chris Conroy. Have a great day and stay with us. There's more news ahead.
And now, the daytime edition.
In the Middle East, another death watch today. A Lebanese radical group that says it's holding American Joseph Scipio claims they will execute him at 11 a.m. if religious leader Sheikh Obaid is not released by Israel.
Scipio, the acting comptroller at the American University of Beirut, was kidnapped in 1986. This latest threat comes one day after another terrorist group reportedly hanged U.S. Marine Lieutenant Colonel William Higgins. Now, we should warn you, the video you're about to see is graphic. Yesterday, the Organization of the Oppressed on Earth, an offshoot of the pro-Iranian Hezbollah, or Party of God, released a 30-second videotape showing a man they claim to be the 44-year-old Higgins hanging from a noose. Sources close to the White House now say administration officials have concluded the man in the video is probably the lieutenant colonel. But there is nothing on the video to indicate when it was taken. There had been earlier reports Higgins died shortly after his capture in February 1988. Higgins was in Lebanon leading a UN peacekeeping force. In a typewritten statement yesterday, Higgins' alleged killer said the hanging was in retaliation for Israel's kidnapping of Muslim spiritual leader Sheikh Abdul Obaid. Obaid was abducted on Friday from his home in southern Lebanon. Israeli leaders have accepted responsibility for the kidnapping, and President Bush is criticizing Israel for the abduction. Last night, Bush said the reported execution of Higgins underscores the consequences of hostage-taking.
It is a most troubling and disturbing matter that has shocked the American people right to the core.
The Senate voted yesterday to condemn the terrorists, and last night congressional leaders met with the president for a briefing. A former hostage, the Reverend Lawrence Jenko, says he's praying the U.S. will take a moderate path and not resort to brute force.
So all sides are guilty in kidnapping and doing these acts of violence to another human being. So what I have to say to all of them is stop it. You know, to the Muslims and Christians and Jews, why do you keep doing this? What has it accomplished, your violence in the world? Nothing but death.
Sources say it's unlikely the U.S. will seek military retaliation because they're not sure exactly who the kidnappers are or their location. Also, a military strike would threaten the safety of the other hostages. The reports of Higgins' death came just hours after Israel proposed a swap of all Shiite Muslim captives in return for Western hostages held in Lebanon. And now a man claiming to represent the oppressed on earth called a Western news agency in Cyprus, claiming Higgins' body was left in South Beirut and picked up by Syrian troops. A White House aide has said Syria denied that report. The same caller also said Anglican Church envoy hostage Terry Waite will die today if Sheikh Obaid is not released. There is, however, no confirmation on that report.
Well, the apparent murder of Colonel Higgins is once again raising the questions, what can the United States do to prevent hostage-taking, and what role should Congress take in dealing with the crisis in the Middle East?
Joining us now from our nation's capital is Republican Congressman Norman Lent of Baldwin and Democrat Congressman Thomas Downey from West Islip. Gentlemen, thank you for speaking with us. Congressman Downey, it certainly goes without saying the situation is terribly frustrating at this point. The Senate has unanimously condemned the alleged execution of Lieutenant Colonel Higgins, but those are just words. I'm concerned about action at this point. Is there any action that can be taken, and what are the options?
Well, first of all, I want to express my regrets to the wife of Colonel Higgins. If in fact he's dead, it's pretty clear at this time that he probably is. There's very little that the Congress can do other than to support the administration in this particular crisis. I think the President has spoken for all of us when he says that we are deeply shocked and offended by what has happened. But there are limited options for us if, in fact, we use military measures against camps or targets in the Middle East. It's likely to mean the death of the other hostages. So the President has said that these people will ultimately be held accountable, and I believe that we should marshal all of our forces, overt and clandestine, to make sure that that happens.
What does that mean, though? More negotiations?
Well, I don't know that negotiations at this point make much difference. Many of these terrorist acts are related to internal problems that one side is having with the other. For instance, the radical Hezbollah may be deciding that it's time to do these things because they're upset with the election of Rafsanjani in Iran to try and make improve relations between the United States and Iran more difficult. One never knows. We're not even sure, frankly, if Colonel Higgins was killed at the time of the videotape or if it wasn't some time before that.
Congressman Lent, the opinion in Congress seems to be mixed right now as to who we blame for the most recent apparent murder of Colonel Higgins. Do we lay the blame at the feet of the Israelis for the action they took in kidnapping Sheikh Obaid?
I don't think we ought to lay the blame at the Israelis. Let's remember who did this deed. It was the Arabs. They are the ones who did it. They are the ones who have taken these hostages, and despite 3-4 years now of negotiations and diplomacy, they are still held in Lebanon. And therefore, I don't foreclose the use of military force here. I think that ought to be one of the options that is very seriously considered. We've taken the other route. It hasn't been fruitful. And we've seen the barbarism that is practiced by these people, and perhaps the only language they understand is that of brute force.
There have been some suggestions that maybe Sheikh Obaid be extradited to the United States to stand trial for murder. Do you believe that's a viable option in this case? Or do we put the rest of the American hostages in jeopardy?
I hadn't heard that, and I don't think that we want to extradite him into this country. He was taken by the Israelis. He is their prisoner. They have their own agenda, and when they took Sheikh Obaid, I think they had something quite different from what is actually happening in mind. And it hasn't worked out, obviously, the way the Israelis had hoped, or the way the Americans had hoped. And now that they have him, I think they ought to keep him. He is their problem, and let them negotiate, because we don't negotiate with these terrorists. Let the Israelis negotiate and try to work this thing out.
Just a minute ago, you said that perhaps violence is the only thing the terrorists understand. How do you suggest, then, we strike back using violence?
Well, I don't want to delineate exactly how military action could be carried out. I think Senator Mitchell, the majority leader of the Senate, has said what is in the minds and hearts of most of us. We're shocked, we're outraged, and we stand behind our president. Whatever options that he has, we foreclose none of them. But it has been suggested by some that we bomb a city a day or a village a day for every day that the hostages are held back. I don't suggest that, but this is the kind of thing that could be done. Surgical strikes are also a possibility, where we try to take out some of the leaders of the Hezbollah, the other leaders. We know who they are, and pretty generally we know their whereabouts. So there are any number of options, military and otherwise, that could be taken to avenge the death of Colonel Higgins.
Congressman Downey, do you agree that that is an option, that we bomb Lebanon, we start surgical strikes?
Well, it's one of the options, and I don't think it should be foreclosed, but I don't think, frankly, that it makes a great deal of sense to go bomb villages. Innocent people die as a result of that, and it could only result in the death of the other hostages. I think what Congressman Lent is saying is that this is just one of several options that the president has before him. Clearly, the intelligence agencies have a pretty good idea of who some of these barbarians are. Indeed, Sheikh Obeid himself is one. And clearly, if he is brought to trial and executed in Israel, that would be partial recompense, it seems to me, for the acts, as despicable as they've been, that he and others have committed. It is just very difficult. I mean, right now, in the heat of the moment, watching the awful videotape that you showed, the anguish and the anger that all of us feel is very high. But we shouldn't lose sight of the ultimate result, and that is we would like Mr. Scipio out and the other 6, including the Anglican envoy Terry Waite, to be ultimately removed from this land, and to do something that would precipitate all of their deaths makes very little sense to me.
All right, Congressman Tom Downey and Congressman Norman Lent, thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us today from Washington. And indeed, the hostage situation in Lebanon continues to be a very frustrating one. Many other hostages still being held. Here's a list of the other ones now being held captive in the Middle East.
I'm a Long Islander, and I'm proud of it.
Long in the shore of it is island pride.
I'm a Long Islander, and proud of it.
Long in the shore of it is island pride.
Alcoholism is a terminal illness. There's no shame in being sick. The only shame is doing nothing about it. The Seafield Center can help you and your family defeat this illness. Our philosophy of individually designed treatment programs, group therapy sessions, and a family atmosphere has contributed to our success. The Seafield Center combines quality, personalized care with prices you can afford. The Seafield Center. There is help for alcoholism. The only shame is doing nothing about it.
Tuesday, July 25th, News 12 Long Island presents Neil Simon's Broadway Bound, the last chapter in the Eugene Jerome trilogy, at the Gateway Playhouse in Bellport. All proceeds benefit Little Flower Children's Services in Wading River. Broadway Bound, July 25th at the Gateway Playhouse. Call 286-0555 for tickets.
A 13-year-old from Bayshore is arraigned today, charged with molesting young boys. Police say the teenager was arrested on Friday night after complaints from a neighbor. He was later released in his parents' custody. Police say the boy, whose name is being withheld because of his young age, molested 2 boys aged 5 and 7. A parent of one of the reported victims says more parents are likely to come forward with complaints. The teenager is charged with sexual abuse and sodomy.
And the school bus driver accused of sexually abusing children is arraigned today on a 20-count indictment. 39-year-old Robert Izzo is charged with molesting a 13-year-old boy and a 5-year-old girl. Izzo, a former driver for a Hicksville school and a former Boy Scout leader, was arrested in May. He was accused of abusing the 13-year-old boy over a 3-year period. Now, a judge released him on $20,000 bail, but then he was arrested on the second charge last month. Izzo now remains behind bars. He's being held without bail.
A man from Massapequa is sentenced today for the murder of 22-year-old Jane Verity Stutzbach of Baldwin. 30-year-old Bradford Applegate was convicted of second-degree murder in June. The case dates back to February of 1988. That's when Verity disappeared. Her body was found 3 months later in the Hudson River. Defense lawyers say Applegate killed Verity in self-defense after she attacked him while they were both high on drugs. Jane Verity Stutzbach was a member of the Verity family, one of Seaford's founding families. Applegate faces 31 years to life in prison.
There's an uneasy feeling in Freeport these days. In recent weeks, the community has been plagued with a rash of violent crimes, the most shocking being last week's murder of 58-year-old mortgage banker William Von Der Esch. That crime prompted a community protest on Sunday and still has neighbors talking.
It's too dangerous now. Too many people are getting mugged. Because the same thing happened to my cousin's boyfriend's mother. They say that she got mugged by the same people that did this to this man here.
This really has got to come to a stop. People are afraid to go out at night. This is not right to have this in Freeport.
Other residents describe the murder of Von Der Esch as an isolated incident and say they feel Freeport is still, for the most part, a safe area.
There are now cries of racism in the case of a jailed Coram teenager. Ismail Rashid is under arrest for his alleged role in a shooting at a Lake Grove restaurant. As News 12's Carolyn Gussoff reports, Rashid's family and friends say he is a victim of racism, not the assailant.
They made a quiet circle outside district court to protest what they say was the unjustified arrest of an innocent teenager. 17-year-old Ismail Rashid of Coram, a high school champion wrestler and honor student, is charged with gun possession in last week's shooting through a Friendly's restaurant window. It happened during a fight between a rival group of teens outside a disco. Rashid's supporters say he was not the assailant, but the victim of a racial attack.
It was a racist fight, you know. They seen us, you know, that there was only a couple of people with us, and we were Hispanic and black. And, you know, they just, you know, approached us and everything.
My son just went there to pick up a friend who asked him to come and get him because he had no transportation to get out of there. And when he arrived, he was jumped by a group of young white guys outside of the club, and he was beat unconscious.
Police tell a different story. They say Rashid was one of many teens involved in the fight outside Rascals, and he was the one seen with a sawed-off shotgun. He's also charged with assaults at a carnival in Middle Island. His friends say in both cases, Rashid was beaten by a white gang, and police interviewed the wrong people.
They should have arrested the people that was in the fight. All they arrested was the black people. They didn't arrest no, you know, white people. And, you know, I guess it's just prejudice.
There's always a word coming up, and that one word is always it's always nigger, that one word, all the time. From these kids, from the cops, we've heard it already, and, you know, it's out there. The prejudice is out there. It's evident.
No formal complaint of racism has been made to police, so right now they're not even investigating any possible racial overtones in the case. They're asking anyone who knows differently to contact police or the district attorney's office.
We still have no complaint from anyone that there was a racial incident. Should anyone come forward and provide information, or if we develop that information, certainly our racial religious unit would look into it.
But critics say the police investigation has been at best incomplete, at worst racist. They will fight the criminal charges, and they're considering pressing their own charges against the people they see as the real assailants. In Hauppauge, Carolyn Gussoff, News 12, Long Island.
Well, yesterday's weather wasn't quite as bad as we expected. Today gets even better, but I suspect the people living along the Gulf Coast are in for some stormy days ahead.
Right, with today being the worst, with Chantal moving inland now. It's moving in
to the east of Houston. So Houston itself, which is inland anyway, will not bear the brunt of the storm, unlike some past hurricanes back in the early 80s when Hurricane Alicia blew out the windows of most of the tall buildings in Houston. This time around, we're dealing with a minimal hurricane, but a hurricane nonetheless with Chantal. And we have a satellite view to show you as the hurricane is now crossing the coastline and moving inland, spreading 10 to 15 inches of rain throughout most of what is called the Golden Triangle of Texas, right here through southeastern Texas. This is an area, by the way, over the last couple of months in East Texas and western Louisiana that has experienced tremendous amounts of rain. So the last thing they needed was a hurricane to come in and dump another big deluge, but they're getting just that, and there will be considerable flooding during the next couple of days as all that moisture funnels inland. But winds along the coast that we were checking with surface observations earlier in the day, gusting well past 50 miles an hour at places right along coastal Cameron and Vermilion parishes in Louisiana, and along coastal Texas around Beaumont, Port Arthur, west to around Galveston. And that seems to be the worst. If you have friends and folks down in the coastal bend of Texas, Corpus Christi and the Clear, in fact, temperatures today will probably climb well into the 90s there because they're getting winds coming around the backside of the hurricane, and that's a warm, dry wind. They may even get to 100. And Brownsville as well, also dry. So is San Antonio. So while somebody's getting clobbered, somebody else isn't doing so bad. Hurricane Chantal at 29.4 and 94.4 moving inland. It's right over High Island, Texas, and going to the north and headed for land. Top winds 80 miles an hour, the lowest pressure, and it will start rising from here as the hurricane weakens once the entire circulation center comes out from over the water, and it's moving northwest at 12 miles an hour. Here's a tight radar view, and this radar really can show you how the rains band up around a hurricane, and it's just that, bands or banding. If you notice, there's a lead squall band here in the green, then you have a yellow band in the middle with some heavier squalls, and then you can see how the radar arcs around when the circulation center was over the water, just by following the curvature of the echoes. And as that moves inland, the precipitation will have a tendency to funnel out to the north and to the east and to the north and to the west. Also, we should mention, if you have friends or if you're headed for Dallas-Fort Worth, they're way up here. They might as well be 1,000,000 miles away. They're so far away they won't have any problems from this until the rain starts spreading up toward the northwest. Here's our eastern satellite view as we focus on our own weather, which is a lot more tame with respect and certainly a lot better than what we thought yesterday. And we will have more on that later on in this program. Here's your boating forecast now for the rest of the day. And it really isn't a bad day to do some outdoor things, as the sun will be out at times. Winds will be from the northeast at only about 10 knots or so. Seas 1 to 2 feet on the ocean, flat on the sound, 5 miles or better visibility. Water in the low 70s, and tides are running near normal. And here are your high tide times for Jones Beach, Port Jeff, and Montauk Point. We have another Tropical Storm Dean, which we will save and talk to you about later on, along with the complete local forecast.
We're not threatened by the hurricane or the tropical storm, right?
Neither. The hurricane, most probably not. The tropical storm is something we'll deal with when it gets a little closer, if it gets closer.
Looks like it could be a busy next few days for you.
Yes, it certainly will.
Okay.
It always is.
Thanks, Joe. Coming up on News 12, West Hempstead residents fight Pilgrim State.
And as we reported earlier, the apparent execution of Colonel William Higgins is on the minds of many today, bringing to light once again the hostage crisis in the Middle East. Well, Long Island, do you think the United States should do more to try and free the hostages? We're asking, and here's what you're saying.
My name is Kenny Boyle. I'm from Woodbury. And I think the United States reaction should be a firm and quick one, and one that takes an action along the lines of Israel's.
My name is Joan Vanguard. I'm right here in Woodbury. And something's got to be done. The president should definitely take some serious action against it.
My name is Rhoda Bieber. I'm from Huntington. I was outraged, and I just think we should be a little stronger and show that we won't stand for that kind of behavior.
Charles Binder from the law firm of Binder & Binder.
You get a great deal of satisfaction when you win for people who need benefits. And we do anything concerning the elderly and the disabled. That is our field that we practice in. It's not merely Social Security, it's all the areas around disability and disabled people. Most of our clients come from other clients, and they know about our reputation. You have to be very sympathetic, you have to be extremely knowledgeable, and you have to be willing to fight for your clients.
Binder & Binder, call now for a free consultation and find out how their experience can help you.
For years they laughed and scoffed at me. They said I couldn't create the perfect blend of style, security, and insulation.
Yes, master.
But I've done it. I've created the perfect door. The Magnum 33 steel insulated door system.
It's available only from Elegant Entries, New York's oldest and largest insulated door manufacturer.
For security and energy-saving doors, windows, and garage doors, call Elegant Entries at 800-482-6900. Free shop at home, 800-482-6900. Call now. Sale going on.
The Senate is expected to consider measures that would restore money for the Grumman F-14D fighter jet today. Last week, the House considered similar measures and ultimately approved a defense budget that includes money for the jet. Observers say, though, the F-14D is facing a tougher battle in the Senate. If it's rejected there, the House and Senate will try to work out a compromise budget that may or may not include money for the F-14D. Now, if the jet is cut from the Pentagon's budget, Grumman says over the long run, it may have to lay off nearly 10,000 Long Island workers.
The town of Babylon is getting ready to begin construction on a new ash fill. The town has approved a $5.5 million for the project and expects to complete it in about a half a year. The new ash fill will provide a permanent resting place for ash from the town's resource recovery plant. That plant began operation earlier in the year. The two facilities are part of Babylon's plan to permanently close portions of the Babylon landfill.
Pilgrim State Psychiatric Hospital is looking to open a group home in West Hempstead, but neighbors there are fighting the plan. Residents of West Hempstead attended a packed meeting yesterday, many calling the plan unfair. They say West Hempstead already has more than its share of such homes, while neighboring communities don't have any.
Independent living skills. In West Hempstead, we think we are at the point where we are oversaturated. Hempstead is 10 times the size of West Hempstead, and there are 4 such homes. In West Hempstead we have 5. In Elmont there are 3. Franklin Square, 0. Garden City, 0. Can you tell me, is that fair play?
Supporters of the West Hempstead site say the protest is just another case of NIMBY, not in my backyard. Similar protests were held last week in Manhasset Hills and New Hyde Park.
In spite of President Bush's read my lips denials, rumors persist in Washington that tax increases are on the way. Democrat Steve Villano and Republican Bob McMillan have heard those rumors and have made them the subject of today's Taking Sides.
Steve, the latest rumor out of Washington is maybe the government will enact a super sales tax. They call it a value-added tax. And that's a tax that hits poor people the hardest because, in effect, it adds 10 to 15% to the price of all goods that are purchased in this country. There's another rumor going on, too, that Dan Rostentowski, the chairman of the powerful Ways and Means Committee, is about to enter a deal with George Bush to allow for an increase in taxes to give George Bush the opportunity for a reduction in the capital gains tax. Now, I strongly favor a reduction in the capital gains tax. What happened when the law went into effect a few years ago that put income tax and capital gains on the same level, the state of New York lost tremendous amounts of revenue because developers were not able to turn that property over to develop and to wheel and deal with property, which has been part of our system, built into the system, so much so that the state was shocked when it lost revenues.
For a minute there at first, when you were opposing a tax upon the poor, I thought that maybe there was a glimmer of hope that here at last we had a Republican who had found the light. But this ill-conceived notion of a cut in capital gains tax at a time when the poor are being ground into the dirt by the Republican administration in Washington just should be put on the shelf. Here you have George Bush, who opposed an increase in the minimum wage, which would have helped the very poorest in our society. Here you have a Republican administration presiding over a cesspool of scandal in HUD, where millions and millions of dollars aimed at providing housing for the poor went into the pockets of rich Republicans and their friends.
Which was
and
wrong,
now,
and George Bush won't
Now
condone
you
that.
have the Republican administration in Washington wanting to put more money in the pockets of the rich. What's the matter? They weren't able to give enough ambassadorships to their rich friends all around the world? They've got to put a couple of $100 grand more in their pocket?
There are a lot of people sitting out here. There are a lot of people watching this show that would say, boy, I wish I could make some of those capital gains. Let's get this economy moving, and capital gains is one way to do it.
This country should provide everyone the opportunity to make a good living, to make a lot of money, and to do well. But this government in Washington must stand up for the rights of the people who cannot stand up for themselves, and that it is failing to do.
The views expressed by Steve Villano and Bob McMillan are their own, and Taking Sides can be seen twice weekly on News 12.
Coming up on News 12, your home phone lines, to pay or not to pay. That is the question. The answer when we return.
And we leave you now with an updated look at Long Island's roadways. Don't go away.
Today, people are living longer and healthier lives. Hi, I'm Dr. Frederick Seltzer, and no matter what your age, good dental care is vital to your overall health as well as the way you feel about yourself. You'll feel at home in our private office with a staff that cares about you, where your comfort and appearance are important to us. For your convenience, we offer weekend and evening appointments and easy payment plans. And for seniors, we offer a special 20% discount. Call 791-3555. And remember, I give extra special care for cowards.
The Coral House in Baldwin, overlooking Milburn Lake, nestled in a quaint rural setting, is Long Island's most popular dining and catering facility. You'll be seduced by atmosphere, indulged by culinary expertise, and catered to by a team of personnel. Our new colonial skylight room, enclosed outdoor deck, lakeside dining room, Merrick or Milburn rooms make us a special choice for your next dining experience or catered function. Your beautiful moment deserves a beautiful setting. The Coral House Restaurant and Caterer.
My head was down, I was feeling low. It was Saturday morning, my transmission wouldn't go, so I called up Gibraltar. Fix it fast, fix it right. Got me cruising on a Saturday night. Gibraltar got me cruising on a Saturday night. Cruising with Gibraltar, holding my honey real tight. Cruising with Gibraltar, singing the songs on the radio, and I'm the star of the show. Gibraltar keeps your car on the go. When the rain comes into view, cool air surrounding, cold and rain. The air of quality cools with efficiency.
When summer heats up your neighborhood, cool down with a call for reliable, high-efficiency air conditioning from Rheem.
Call me Rheem. Cool air of quality.
For your local Rheem dealer, call Tempart at 538-2840.
Police are on the scene in Oceanside, where a body was found this morning.
We have News 12's Carolyn Gussoff standing by now in Oceanside. She has all the latest. Carolyn.
Roma and Lee Nassau County Police got the call at about 6:30 this morning. Neighbors in this Oceanside neighborhood reported hearing popping sounds. When police arrived, they found a body on fire beneath a concrete slab in front of a concrete supply company. Now, detectives are busy on the scene. Their investigation has really just begun.
Employees responding to their normal work schedule this morning on their way to the Jonathan Woodworking Company saw that there was a fire at a nearby building. When they went to investigate, one of them noticed that there was a body under some concrete. Further investigation now reveals that perhaps this is a murder victim, and we're investigating it, waiting for the arrival of the medical examiner and to do an autopsy to see if, in fact, this person is a murder victim.
It looks to us as if the body is reclining. Is it a possibility that this was somebody sleeping down there set on fire?
Well, that's one of the possibilities we're exploring, but I'm treating this like a murder rather than just a homeless person who was involved in some kind of an accident.
Now, neighbors are telling us that this is a relatively safe neighborhood. It is an industrial area, really very few homeless people, if that is a possibility. And finally, detectives tell us that the body is so badly charred, they can't even tell if the victim is male, female, what race, and certainly they have no identity yet. Let's go back now to the studio.
Okay, thanks a lot, Carolyn. Continuing on now. Warning about the AIDS threats are popping up everywhere, but some people don't seem to be getting the message. Cases among intravenous drug users are increasing. In a follow-up to our series called Drugs, No Quick Fix, News 12's Rosemary Gomez studies the problem.
Carol's biggest dream is to be a good mother and make her daughter happy. The problem is she can't. Carol is a former drug addict. She knows she's made a lot of mistakes, but now there's one she can't correct. Carol has AIDS.
Come on, Lee. Hello, Carol. How you doing? Hi, Ollie. Hi there. Come on, Lee. Hello, little one.
Heroin and cocaine I was using on a daily basis, and it got to the point where I was out on the street.
Carol discovered she had AIDS when she was pregnant with her daughter Leah. Her biggest concern is leaving this deadly legacy behind.
I don't know if 2-3 years from now, all of a sudden antibodies are going to show up in her blood. We don't know. They don't know anything about this disease.
Carol believes she got the disease from sharing needles. That's how AIDS usually spreads from addict to addict. Right now, addicts comprise 38% of the AIDS cases on Long Island, and those numbers are growing.
As the rate seems to have leveled off among homosexual populations, that is not the case with the IV drug abuser.
Before undergoing treatment, Carol spent her day like most addicts, looking for a quick fix. She said she never thought about her chances of catching anything. The only thing she thought about was getting high.
We're not involved in daily activities of a normal person. We're just into stealing and getting that next fix.
Counselors say that's why addicts are so hard to reach. They're basically an underground society that doesn't keep up with the latest news.
Like me, for instance, I woke up in the morning, you know, I didn't sit at the kitchen table with my wife and have coffee and read the paper. I was out traipsing through the Bronx looking for dope.
Gregory was an addict for many years. So was his wife, Joy, who has AIDS. But she's still finding it hard to accept.
Like even 5 years ago, it was always, oh, not me. You know, it's just the faggots, it's this one, that one. It's the people that are always in galleries, and, you know, I'm only using my set, and that's it.
Most addicts only find out they have AIDS after receiving treatment for their drug problems, and by then, it's often too late.
They must have access to treatment so that he has and she has an option to do something other than continually infect themselves as well as infect other people with contaminated needles.
Carol is in the process of drawing up a will and making arrangements for a time when she no longer will be there to help her daughter.
Pray a lot. I do. I believe in God now more than I do in anything.
In East Meadow, I'm Rosemary Gomez, News 12, Long Island.
Well, ever since they broke up the phone company, life has become one decision after another. Which long-distance company is best, you ask? What kind of phone should you buy? And now the big question is wires. Should you pay the phone company to maintain your wires? News 12's Julie Kessler just may have the answer for you. She's here now.
Well, fixing it yourself, Roma, is the real key to the whole issue. You've all seen it by now, a pamphlet telling you you've got to make another choice of whether to continue to pay New York Telephone 95 cents a month for your inside wires or drop the service and be responsible for fixing it yourself. Are you planning on paying the extra $1 a month?
Yes, I am. Just for the peace of mind of knowing that if something goes wrong, I can call them up and they'll come in and take care of it.
The chances of the wiring breaking down is so slim that you would wind up paying more for the service than is needed. So I'll take a chance. I don't think the wiring will go bad.
To figure out whether you really need to spend more money on yet another service, you first got to ask the questions. Which wires are covered and which aren't? Do wires ever break? What are your chances of having wire trouble? As of January 1st, you'll be responsible for choosing who will maintain the wiring New York Telephone has installed in your home or apartment. The fee amounts to an insurance policy covering most of the things that could go wrong with phone wiring or jacks inside your home.
So it makes it free of any anxiety or time spent on a weekend, that type of thing.
What is covered in the fee is the telephone wire that starts from about 10 feet of wherever the line enters your home. It also includes jack and phone outlets. It does not include the cord from the jack to your telephone, nor does it include the line from the telephone pole to the house. If you drop the service, you're on your own when a jack breaks or a wire rips. What if you don't sign up? The phone company will fix it for $61.57, their minimum charge. Or you can fix it yourself or call an electrician. Suffolk County Consumer Affairs Commissioner Jane Devine advises consumers to consider your own needs.
Maybe you should take a look at the kind of repairs that you've needed in the past. How many times have you had to call for service to the wires inside your home? These are the kinds of things that you have to think about.
Wires like this generally last a long time, but as they grow old, they grow brittle. So your chances of having trouble increase with the age of the house. Consumer advocates estimate the chance of anything going wrong is 1 in 21.
Wow.
Lee, Roma?
Boy, with my luck, as soon as I do that, my wires will probably break or get crossed.
What happens, Julie, though, if you decide to drop the service and then you find you have wire problems and you want to subscribe to it?
You can get it back again, but the phone company will charge a one-time fee of $9.90.
All right, and tomorrow another question we'll talk about
how to buy a telephone. A lot of people still rent.
That's right. And when you go out and buy one, that's another problem you have to worry about. Thanks a lot, Julie. Coming up on News 12, meteorologist Joe Chaffee says soak up the rays while you can. Complete island forecast just in a moment.
And Stan Dworkin's in the produce corner. He says you better keep a glass of water handy. That's next.
How are we today? We are hot, hot, hot in the produce corner.
Come to the world of Genevieve.
Hi, Sarah. Here's your allergy medicine.
Thanks. How about my dad's prescription?
The GenCare computer says your blood pressure medicine is due for a refill.
I still have some left.
He doesn't always take it.
I feel okay, so sometimes I don't bother.
To get the full benefit from your medication, always take it exactly the way the doctor prescribes.
I'll make sure he takes it.
I'm counting on you.
We'll take good care of you.
You don't have to call Arrow Exterminators to protect your home or business against termites. And you don't have to call Arrow to get rid of carpenter ants. You don't even have to call Arrow to keep ticks and fleas away. But if you do call Arrow Exterminators, you'll get the benefit of over 40 years' experience helping Long Island businesses and homeowners get rid of all of life's little pests.
Arrow, always on target.
Maybe you do have to call.
East Meadows' Frank Viola is coming home. Finally, after a week of rumors, the big deal is done. The Mets have acquired the 1988 Cy Young Award winner in exchange for 5 players. The deal for Viola was completed less than 10 minutes before the trading deadline expired. In exchange for Viola, the Twins will receive pitchers Rick Aguilera and Dave West, plus 3 players to be named later. The Mets have confirmed those players will also be pitchers, and one of them will be Kevin Tapani. Well, Frank Viola may be coming to the Mets just in time. The Mets' unlucky number stands at 7 as they lost their 7th in a row, and they're now 7 games out of first place. They were beaten by St. Louis yesterday 3-2. The Cards got on the board against the Amazons and Ron Darling when Ozzie Smith's double drove in Jose De Leon for a 1-0 lead. And then the Cards made it 2-0 on Jose Oquendo's sacrifice fly. That was enough for De Leon, who limited the Mets' offense, or lack of offense, to just 3 hits, sending the Mets to their 7th straight downfall. Today, the Mets will try to snap the slide as they battle the Cards once again.
The Yanks' losing streak stands at 1 now. The Blue Jays gained a split in their 4-game series with the Pinstripes. Toronto beat the Yanks last night 6-5. Toronto got on the board early in the game as Tony Fernandez hit this homer off Yanks ace Andy Hawkins for a 1-0 Jays lead. But the Yanks battled back, and when Steve Sachs hit this 3-run homer, the Yanks were up 4-1. The lead wouldn't last, however. The Jays battered Hawkins in the 4th, and Lloyd Mosby's 2-run homer in the 5th gave the Jays the 6-5 win. One other note, yesterday Toronto claimed ex-Met Lee Mazzilli on waivers. Mazzilli now has 5 days to decide whether to report to the Blue Jays or stay retired. Today the Yanks are in action against the Twins, and we'll have highlights on our evening edition.
Well, it's rumored that Frank Viola may be starting tomorrow night or Thursday night for the Mets, and how do things
But the
look?
big question is it too little too late or not? I mean,
We shall
is
see.
that how you would say it? Not too little too late?
Too much too late.
Too much too late. I mean, because
Either one
he's
works.
a good pitcher.
Yeah.
Well, we shall see.
But we're concerned about weather conditions for the game.
Well, that depends on who you talk to, but...
What the weather conditions?
No, say whether what's more important, weather conditions or the game. It depends on who you talk to.
Well, either way, and I can tell you this much, they could send an ambulance now over to the Yankee team so they can sure use some help. We have to sort of devote equal time to the miseries of both New York clubs, and that's not to say that we're anti-Met or anti-Yankee. Our hearts are more with the Yankees than they are at the Mets, because after all, one always sticks with the fans and the team that, you know, one grew up with, and I grew up more with the Yankees than I did with the Mets. But that's the way life is. All right, these were the lows across eastern Long Island, and temperatures did pretty well, and what was nice was that we stayed dry overnight. A nice change in the forecast. If we're going to mess up the forecast, let's mess it up in the way where you forecast rain and it doesn't happen, particularly when you don't need any more water. And this was the case as most of the moisture stayed suppressed to our south, but Montauk bottoming out at 66. Don Thompson Noyak at 64 for a low, and he's only had one day this summer over 90 degrees for a daytime high. Joe Schivoni, North Haven, low of 65. And our other weather watchers pretty much confirming the same, with readings anywhere from 62 for Holbrook to 63 for Smithtown, and as warm in the overnight period, 66 Centerport and Huntington, and 68 for the low at Great Neck. And some of our other weather watchers, as we check out Jack Groff from Port Jeff, a low of 69, Matt Boder of Selden, a low of 62. On the South Shore, Carol Burnson bottoming out 67 at Mud Creek, East Islip, a low of 63, and Marvin Frickless of Freeport, a low of 65. Full U.S. view of the weather shows nice weather across the northern states, and it will stay that way for the next couple of days. A little bit of a battle zone in the middle where the dry air meets the tropical air to the south, and we're sort of getting affected by that. That's why we still have residual clouds as a little disturbance ripples away off the mid-Atlantic coast. There's Chantal as it's moving inland. Once it moves inland, it will weaken, and then our focus will come on Tropical Storm Dean, which is well out into the Atlantic, about 800 miles to the east-southeast of San Juan, Puerto Rico. Top winds are 50 miles an hour, and we expect Dean to become a hurricane in the next 12 to 24 hours. So we will be talking about more tropical systems over the next couple of days. So stay tuned on the morning and daytime editions here on News 12 if you want the accurate weather information. Here's our forecast for the rest of the day, and enjoy the day, everybody. Even though the sun won't be out all the time, it'll be out some of the time. Dry and cool, sun and clouds, 77 to 82. Tonight, look for mostly clear, cool, and dry, lows 58 to 63. Warmer tomorrow with sunshine, 80 to 85 degrees.
Well, all in all, not a bad day to eat spicy foods, would you say?
Okay.
That's
Okay. That's stretching it just a bit, Roma, but give it a try.
Let's move on in now. Peppers, especially hot peppers, can really spice up a dish. Well, today, News 12 Stan Dworkin is in the produce corner with some really hot stuff.
Today in the Produce Corner, we are hot stuff, and that's what we're talking about. Hot stuff. We're going to be talking about peppers that are available fresh on the market and peppers that are available in jars. The reason I'm going to both jars and fresh is that the peppers available vary from season to season. For example, there are no cherry peppers available fresh yet, but they will be later on. Cherry peppers, which are these small peppers, cherry peppers are available either green or red. They are hot in both. This is an interesting pepper. It's the kind of pepper where you bite into it and says, oh, that's not hot. Hot, 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 hot. It comes to you after a moment. These are peperoncini, which really just means little peppers. These are wonderful for sprinkling over antipasto. You just sprinkle a handful. You don't cut them up or anything because they can be eaten whole. You don't worry about taking off any part of them. The whole thing can be eaten. These are long green peppers. Now we're into the realm of fresh peppers. These are available in the supermarket right now. Long green hot peppers, they're not terribly hot. So that if you are frying them up, by all means, do not be ungenerous with them. But of course, taste them first. Now, if we're talking hot, currently the hottest thing on the market is jalapeno peppers. These are jalapeno peppers. They are hot. Don't kid yourself. Jalapeno means hot in the native dialect. All peppers are variable. Every single one of these peppers are capable of being either hotter or not so hot, depending on which pepper you pick up. Also, I have been reminded to warn you, if you're handling peppers, don't then touch your eyes. You will burn yourself because the hot stuff stays on your hand. Hot peppers are in. So you want to know a little bit about them? go to your supermarket. Until next time in the Produce Corner, stand working, News 12 Long Island.
Stan is absolutely right about that. I had a friend wipe his eyes once after cutting peppers, and his 2 eyes blew up. Oh, my. Very seriously. Be careful. When we come back, we'll give you a preview of some athletes kicking up their heels martial arts style for a good cause.
And they were clamming it up in East Hampton. We have that story and much more as the daytime edition continues. Don't go away.
News 12's Produce Corner, brought to you by King Cullen, America's first supermarket.
From the lady in the harbor to the lighthouse on the ocean, from the farms out east to the city streets, it's the place that we call home. We're friendly people, and here's our way. We give our best every day. Long Island, we've served you as you've grown. We're King Cullen, Long Island's own.
He's up and gone early. It's crazy, but no matter how hot it gets, he works without air conditioning. Because that's how he makes his living. People trust him, and he deserves it. He earns it every day. Of course, you wouldn't have to tell us that.
Your Rheem dealer makes Rheem the right choice.
For your local Rheem dealers, check your yellow pages or call MCN Distributors at 420-1620.
Turning now to our people file, Janet Culver, the 48-year-old woman originally from East Quogue, who survived 14 days adrift in the Atlantic Ocean, says she survived because she knew she had to. She told rescuers she and her companion, Nicholas Abbott, jumped into an 8-foot inflatable life raft when their 37-foot sailboat started to sink halfway between Bermuda and the United States. All they could take with them, she said, was a half-gallon of water, some cold cuts, crackers, a bag of peanuts, and a can of grapefruit juice. Abbott, delirious and babbling, swam off to his death on the 10th day. Culver is recovering in a Bermuda hospital. Actor Robin Williams is probably trading in his Good Morning Vietnam cry for a new one. The new one is Good Morning Zelda. That's his new baby daughter's name. She arrived yesterday in New York City, tipping the scales at 9 pounds 6 ounces. Williams says baby and mother, his wife Marcia, are doing just fine. Zelda is Williams' first daughter, but second child. He has a 6-year-old son from his first marriage. And the cartoon character, Mr. Magoo, is about to hit the big 4-0, and birthday plans are in the works. A nationwide talent hunt is being launched to find a new voice for Magoo, which had been provided by the late Jim Backus. The new Magoo will work on a Mr. Magoo movie, and the people who produce the popular cartoons say the movie will introduce a new character, Magoo's niece, Megan Magoo. What else? To the untrained eye, the different martial arts may look pretty much the same, but the experts know that each discipline is very different, each with its own moves, styles, and teachings. Taekwondo is practiced in over 140 countries by more than 20 million people. Here in this country, one of the best schools is right here on Long Island in East Meadow. Grand Master Yan Wan Park is the school's founder and the coach of the 1992 United States Olympic Taekwondo team. John Buren is a master instructor, and both men now join Lee in our studio to talk about this weekend's tournament to benefit the March of Dimes. Lee?
Roma, thank you. Gentlemen, welcome to News 12. It's a pleasure having you both here. Master Park, I am one of those untrained eyes. I cannot tell the difference between Taekwondo, Karate, Judo, Kung Fu. It all looks the same to me. Taekwondo, what's different about it?
Taekwondo is, first of all, Korean martial art, and other martial art, Karate is Japanese martial art, and Kung Fu is Chinese martial art. We have a major martial art is 3 different kinds. Beside the Kung Fu is a lot of different style names, and beside Karate, a lot of different names. But Taekwondo is only one unified Taekwondo, 70% kicking techniques, and 30% hands technique, and full contact fightings. And Karate is mostly hands technique, and also Kung Fu is hands techniques.
So in Taekwondo then, John, there's a lot of kicking.
That's correct.
Now you are a master instructor.
Yes.
What does that mean?
Okay. That is over third dan instructor, third dan in Taekwondo. I've been studying for about over 20 years.
Now, Master Park, you are a grandmaster. I understand you have 7 black belts, and you've been studying Taekwondo for more than 30 years now?
Yes.
What does a grandmaster mean?
Grandmaster means between 4th degree black belt and 60 degree black. Between 4th to 6th, we call master. And 7, 8, 9 degree, we call grandmaster.
So you still have more to go after 7?
I have to go 8, 9, 2 more degrees.
Boy, to get even better. Okay, we have some pictures of exactly what Taekwondo is, taken at your studio in East Meadow, as a matter of fact. And we'll take a look at it now and tell us what's going on, both of you.
Well, here you're seeing some sparring taking place. This is the traditional sparring that'll be Olympic-style sparring. Taekwondo is the only Olympic martial art.
I noticed the protective gear.
Right. There's protection on the chest, head protection. Kicking to the head is allowed, and you can score points for kicking to the head. Kicking to the body above the belt is also scored as a point.
Now, there's a spiritual side to this also. A calm side. We see people meditating, sort of, in these pictures here.
Absolutely. Taekwondo has a very distinctive philosophy. It is a way of life. It allows you to be calm. You take out your frustrations and your energies, practicing the art, trying to perfect the art. And the spiritual side consists of a number of things. Our philosophy is perseverance, self-control, indomitable spirit. It's truly a way of life as well as a sport.
And also the board breaking there is what we see. So when we think of martial arts, we always think of board breaking and concrete brick breaking, which is we just saw there. You're talking about the philosophy. Master Park, I understand that's got a lot to do with why you're holding the benefit on Friday. On Saturday, August 5th, CW Post Greenvale campus, and you're giving most of the proceeds to the March of Dimes. You saying that has something to do with the whole philosophy of Taekwondo?
Yes. Our Taekwondo practitioner philosophy is helping people, respect elders and other peoples. So always in my mind, when I was little settled down, I helping other peoples and poor peoples, and that's why I was.
John, can you tell us more about the tournament?
Yes, the tournament, of course, will take place on Saturday, August 5th. We're expecting about 500 competitors and about the same number of spectators. So it'll be a major event. It's sanctioned by the USTU, which is the governing body for the Olympics in the United States. So it'll be Olympic-style Taekwondo. It'll be very, very exciting. And
is there a phone number?
Yes,
for information?
Call the school at 735-3434.
All right, that's Saturday, August 5th, CW Post Greenvale campus from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. The tournament, most of the money going to benefit the March of Dimes. Master Park, one more question. 1992, you are the Olympic coach of the United States Taekwondo team in Barcelona, Spain.
I supposed going to Barcelona Olympic as head coach.
Will we bring back the gold?
Not yet. Yeah, of course. Yes.
Of course.
We was last year 4 gold medals and 2 bronze medals.
And in 1992, more gold. Gentlemen, thank you very much for bringing us the information. I hope the benefit is a big success.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Roma, back to you.
Okay, good luck to you all. Thanks, Lee. Long Island has a new clam shucking king today. He was crowned at a contest at the Beach Plum in East Hampton yesterday. News 12's Doug Geed went to the festivities, and he filed this report.
They called it the Greater Hampton Shuck-Off, featuring the quickest clam-cracking characters of the East, including Larry the Clam.
My technique is going to the mouth of the clam itself. A lot of people go through, like I said, there's an art to doing this. Anybody can open up clams, and there's guys like myself, and you'll see that during the contest this afternoon. But other people go through, they take the clam, and they cut it in half. You have 2 clams. My technique is one motion here, the top comes off, and there's a whole clam, a perfect bubble on the top, right there.
All right, Stu, a lot of people have their money on you, saying you're the early favorite. Any pressure on you?
Well, there's a little bit, you know. I've never been in too many competitions for clams, but I've opened them for a long time, so it should become pretty easy for me.
Use intimidation as part of your technique?
Intimidation,
falderall, and this is what happened to the last guy I shucked against.
These are the clams in question. Each contestant will get 100 of these to open as quickly as he can. But it's not necessarily the first person done that wins.
All the clams will be inspected. If there's a broken shell, he'll be penalized 3 seconds.
And they're off. The early favorite proved the winner, Stu Heath of Gosman's Dock, leaving the others in a trail of dust, or at least clamshells. In East Hampton, Doug Geed, News 12, Long Island.
Yum. Oh, yum. Just love those. I'm
Just the way
surprised
you like
nobody lost a finger. That's not easy to do. As long as I don't have to eat them. Sorry, I don't like clams. That is News 12 for this hour. I'm Lee Tyrell. Thanks for joining us.
And I'm Roma Torre in for Carol Silva. Thanks for watching, and we leave you now with some beautiful pictures of Belmont State Lake Park shot by our own Don Pashansky. Stay tuned, more news continues.
This guarantees he don't lose his figure, but makes him out of wind going uphill. Is it good, baby blimp? Oh, boy. Yes, sir, a perfect face for behind ice cream. It's practically unfillable. That's it, take a big spoonful. It fills up. What's the matter? Sure it's cold. You ain't dressed for it, neither. Look at that cute blubber puss. And what a profile, all bulges. No, walking don't keep that figure. It's riding that... Oop, Charlie, look underneath. It got discouraged. Oh, now his heart's broke. Who? You pick him up.
A new type of parachute is tested at Nassau Field, Long Island. There will be a jump to show that with this invention, a parachutist can bail out safely at a much shorter distance above the ground than heretofore, at as little altitude as 75 feet. We see in slow motion how the Volfair parachute works. The cone-shaped canopy below the main spread is a key factor in promptly checking the speed of descent. A focus of attention is on parachutes nowadays, with paratroops figuring so largely in offensive commando warfare.
This is a News 12 special report. I'm Roma Torre. From the Middle East, an execution deadline for American hostage Joseph Sicipio has been extended for 2 days. A statement released by the Lebanese radical group holding Sicipio said the decision was based on, quote, humanitarian considerations that included the emotional appeal for mercy by Sicipio's wife, a Muslim. The hostage takers had said he was to be executed at 11 o'clock this morning. They're calling for the release of religious leader Sheikh Abdul Obaid. He was abducted from his home in southern Lebanon on Friday. The pro-Iranian political party, Hezbollah, earlier rejected Israel's offer to swap Obaid and 2 of his aides for hostages held in Lebanon. Another group believed to be linked to the Hezbollah has claimed they hanged Lieutenant Colonel William Higgins yesterday. Now, we're going to warn you that the video you're about to see is graphic. Yesterday, the Organization of the Oppressed on Earth, an offshoot of the pro-Iranian Hezbollah, or Party of God, released a 30-second videotape showing a man they claim to be the 44-year-old Higgins hanging from a noose. Sources close to the White House now say administration officials have concluded the man in the video is probably the lieutenant colonel. But there is nothing on the video to indicate when it was taken. There had been earlier reports Higgins died shortly after his capture in February 1988. Higgins was in Lebanon leading a UN peacekeeping force. In a typewritten statement yesterday, Higgins' alleged killer said the hanging was in retaliation for Israel's kidnapping of Muslim spiritual leader Sheikh Abdul Obaid. Obaid was abducted on Friday from his home in southern Lebanon. Israeli leaders have accepted responsibility for the kidnapping, and President Bush is criticizing Israel for the abduction. Last night, Bush said the reported execution of Higgins underscores the consequences of hostage-taking.
It is a most troubling and disturbing matter that has shocked the American people right to the core.
The Senate voted yesterday to condemn the terrorists, and last night congressional leaders met with the president for a briefing. A former hostage, the Reverend Lawrence Jenko, says he's praying the U.S. will take a moderate path and not resort to brute force.
So all sides are guilty in kidnapping and doing these acts of violence to another human being. So what I have to say to all of them is stop it. You know, to the Muslims and Christians and Jews, why do you keep doing this? What has it accomplished, your violence in the world? Nothing but death.
Sources say it's unlikely the U.S. will seek military retaliation because they're not sure exactly who the kidnappers are or their location. Also, a military strike would threaten the safety of the other hostages. The reports of Higgins' death came just hours after Israel proposed a swap of all Shiite Muslim captives in return for Western hostages held in Lebanon. And now a man claiming to represent the oppressed on earth called a Western news agency in Cyprus, claiming Higgins' body was left in South Beirut and picked up by Syrian troops. A White House aide has said Syria denied that report. The same caller also said Anglican Church envoy hostage Terry Waite will die today if Sheikh Obaid is not released. There is, however, no confirmation on that report.
Well, the apparent murder of Colonel Higgins is once again raising the questions, what can the United States do to prevent hostage-taking, and what role should Congress take in dealing with the crisis in the Middle East?
Joining us now from our nation's capital is Republican Congressman Norman Lent of Baldwin and Democrat Congressman Thomas Downey from West Islip. Gentlemen, thank you for speaking with us. Congressman Downey, it certainly goes without saying the situation is terribly frustrating at this point. The Senate has unanimously condemned the alleged execution of Lieutenant Colonel Higgins, but those are just words. I'm concerned about action at this point. Is there any action that can be taken, and what are the options?
Well, first of all, I want to express my regrets to the wife of Colonel Higgins. If in fact he's dead, it's pretty clear at this time that he probably is. There's very little that the Congress can do other than to support the administration in this particular crisis. I think the President has spoken for all of us when he says that we are deeply shocked and offended by what has happened. But there are limited options for us if, in fact, we use military measures against camps or targets in the Middle East. It's likely to mean the death of the other hostages. So the President has said that these people will ultimately be held accountable, and I believe that we should marshal all of our forces, overt and clandestine, to make sure that that happens.
What does that mean, though? More negotiations?
Well, I don't know that negotiations at this point make much difference. Many of these terrorist acts are related to internal problems that one side is having with the other. For instance, the radical Hezbollah may be deciding that it's time to do these things because they're upset with the election of Rafsanjani in Iran to try and make improved relations between the United States and Iran more difficult. One never knows. We're not even sure, frankly, if Colonel Higgins was killed at the time of the videotape or if it wasn't some time before that.
Congressman Lent, the opinion in Congress seems to be mixed right now as to who we blame for the most recent apparent murder of Colonel Higgins. Do we lay the blame at the feet of the Israelis for the action they took in kidnapping Sheikh Obaid?
I don't think we ought to lay the blame at the Israelis. Let's remember who did this deed. It was the Arabs. They are the ones who did it. They are the ones who have taken these hostages, and despite 3-4 years now of negotiations and diplomacy, they are still held in Lebanon. And therefore, I don't foreclose the use of military force here. I think that ought to be one of the options that is very seriously considered. We've taken the other route. It hasn't been fruitful. And we've seen the barbarism that is practiced by these people, and perhaps the only language they understand is that of brute force.
There have been some suggestions that maybe Sheikh Obaid be extradited to the United States to stand trial for murder. Do you believe that's a viable option in this case? Or do we put the rest of the American hostages in jeopardy?
I hadn't heard that, and I don't think that we want to extradite him into this country. He was taken by the Israelis. He is their prisoner. They have their own agenda, and when they took Sheikh Obaid, I think they had something quite different from what is actually happening in mind. And it hasn't worked out, obviously, the way the Israelis had hoped, or the way the Americans had hoped. And now that they have him, I think they ought to keep him. He is their problem, and let them negotiate, because we don't negotiate with these terrorists. Let the Israelis negotiate and try to work this thing out.
Just a minute ago, you said that perhaps violence is the only thing the terrorists understand. How do you suggest, then, we strike back using violence?
Well, I don't want to delineate exactly how military action could be carried out. I think Senator Mitchell, the majority leader of the Senate, has said what is in the minds and hearts of most of us. We're shocked, we're outraged, and we stand behind our president. Whatever options that he has, we foreclose none of them. But it has been suggested by some that we bomb a city a day or a village a day for every day that the hostages are held back. I don't suggest that, but this is the kind of thing that could be done. Surgical strikes are also a possibility, where we try to take out some of the leaders of the Hezbollah, the other leaders. We know who they are, and pretty generally we know their whereabouts. So there are any number of options, military and otherwise, that could be taken to avenge the death of Colonel Higgins.
Congressman Downey, do you agree that that is an option, that we bomb Lebanon, we start surgical strikes?
Well, it's one of the options, and I don't think it should be foreclosed, but I don't think, frankly, that it makes a great deal of sense to go bomb villages. Innocent people die as a result of that, and it could only result in the death of the other hostages. I think what Congressman Lent is saying is that this is just one of several options that the president has before him. Clearly, the intelligence agencies have a pretty good idea of who some of these barbarians are. Indeed, Sheikh Obaid himself is one. And clearly, if he is brought to trial and executed in Israel, that would be partial recompense, it seems to me, for the acts, as despicable as they've been, that he and others have committed. It is just very difficult. I mean, right now, in the heat of the moment, watching the awful videotape that you showed, the anguish and the anger that all of us feel is very high. But we shouldn't lose sight of the ultimate result, and that is we would like Mr. Scipio out and the other 6, including the Anglican envoy Terry Waite, to be ultimately removed from this land, and to do something that would precipitate all of their deaths makes very little sense to me.
All right, Congressman Tom Downey and Congressman Norman Lent, thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us today from Washington. And indeed, the hostage situation in Lebanon continues to be a very frustrating one. Many other hostages still being held. Here's a list of the other ones now being held captive in the Middle East.
This has been a News 12 special report.
I'm a Long Islander, and I'm proud of it.
The long and the short of it is island pride.
I'm a Long Islander, and I'm proud of it.
The long and the short of it is island pride.
You don't have to call arrow exterminators to protect your home or business against termites. And you don't have to call arrow to get rid of carpenter ants. You don't even have to call arrow to keep ticks and fleas away. But if you do call arrow exterminators, You'll get the benefit of over 40 years' experience helping Long Island businesses and homeowners get rid of all of life's little pests.
Arrow, always on target.
Maybe you do have to call.
On the horizon, a ray of new light, a chance for a future to start a new life.
A supervised community home like this one gives a small group of mentally ill men and women the chance to learn, to grow, to work, and to return to happier, more productive lives. All they're asking for is a chance for a change.
A chance for a future, a chance for a change.
A 13-year-old from Bayshore is arraigned today, charged with molesting young boys. Police say the teenager was arrested on Friday night after complaints from a neighbor. He was later released in his parents' custody. Police say the boy, whose name is being withheld because of his young age, molested 2 boys aged 5 and 7. A parent of one of the reported victims says more parents are likely to come forward with complaints. The teenager is charged with sexual abuse and sodomy.
And the school bus driver accused of sexually abusing children is arraigned today on a 20-count indictment. 39-year-old Robert Izzo is charged with molesting a 13-year-old boy and a 5-year-old girl. Izzo, a former driver for a Hicksville school and a former Boy Scout leader, was arrested in May. He was accused of abusing the 13-year-old boy over a 3-year period. Now, a judge released him on $20,000 bail, but then he was arrested on the second charge last month. Izzo now remains behind bars. He's being held without bail.
A man from Massapequa was sentenced today for the murder of 22-year-old Jane Verity Stutzback of Baldwin. 30-year-old Bradford Applegate got the maximum. Applegate was convicted of second-degree murder in June. The case dates back to February of 1988. That's when Verity disappeared. Her body was found 3 months later in the Hudson River. Defense lawyers say Applegate killed Verity in self-defense after she attacked him while they were both high on drugs. Jane Verity Stutzback was a member of the Verity family, one of Seaford's founding families.